A warm welcome to this week's edition of Energy Frontiers. I am Justina Okechukwu. This show has been proudly brought to you with support from the African Energy Chamber. Let's take off now with a few headlines of energy quick takes from across Africa and around the world. A new report by UK-based clean energy think tank, EMBA, shows that Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America accounted for 39% of the growth in global gas generation between 2012 and 2022. According to its 2023 Global Electricity Review, EMBA reports that Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia are among countries with the highest shares of gas power in the world, while Namibia, Morocco, and Kenya are leading for wind and solar electricity generation on the African continent. Kinetical Energy, an Australian gas producer, says it is planning to move on with plans to install its own pilot generator set at the Amersfoort project in South Africa. The gas company says the move is part of plans to keep up with the changes in generation licensing requirements and keep interventions by the South African government. A British independent energy company known as Savannah Energy has signed an agreement to sell 10% stake in Cameroon Oil Transportation Company to the National Oil Company of Cameroon, SNH, for a cash consideration of $44.9 million. The Ugandan government is set to pay $250 million or 802 billion shillings to acquire majority shares of power distributor Umeme Limited. This comes as Umeme's 20-year contract comes to a close in 2025, which gives the Museveni government full control of the power distribution system. Norwegian E&P company Panoro Energy has announced that the award for Block EGO1 has been ratified by the government of Equatorial Guinea. The energy producer also says it has received all necessary approvals, allowing for the completion of its farm-in to the Cosmos Energy-operated Block S offshore the west coast of the Central African country. And that was a snapshot of your energy news headlines. When we return, a focus on what it takes to deliver a sustainable energy future for Africa. More on this in just a moment. This is Energy Frontiers. Now, the Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Haitham Al-Ghais, says that investment levels must be adequate for countries to properly utilize their oil and gas resources while taking actions to reduce the carbon footprint of the oil industry. Al-Ghais said this during his keynote address delivered virtually to the Nigerian International Energy Summit held this week in Abuja.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's NIES, namely Global Perspectives for a Sustainable Energy Future, is timely and very apt because climate negotiations need to be inclusive and reflect global perspectives. The perspective of developing countries must be heard. The perspective of Africa must be heard. The perspective of the fuel poor must be heard. As an intergovernmental organization composed exclusively of developing countries, 7 of which are African, OPEC wants all voices included in discussions on energy transitions. I stress it as a plural, as I firmly believe each nation and peoples have their own energy transition pathway. According to our World Oil Outlook, global primary energy demand is forecast to increase by a significant 23% in the period to 2045, which necessitates utilizing all forms of energy. Resultantly, many of our member countries have invested heavily in renewables, particularly solar, nuclear, wind, and waste-to-energy power, in addition to carbon capture, utilization and storage, CCUS, and hydrogen projects, as well as the circular carbon economy, which has received a positive endorsement from the G20. A diverse range of mitigation measures are necessary. The capacities and national circumstances of developing countries must be taken into account in all actions. We should never forget that climate change and sustainable development are two sides of the same coin. According to the UN, 733 million people do not have access to electricity. Furthermore, 1/3 of the world's population use dangerous or inefficient cooking systems, which causes a host of health-related problems. Therefore, policymakers need to be cognizant that even the best-intentioned policies can have unintended consequences. This increases the stakes in the policy design phase. If policy design is not robust and well thought out, the unintended consequences can have lasting and damaging effects, including potential energy shortfalls and market volatility, as we have seen in recent years, which harm both producers and consumers. One of the biggest unintended policy risks relates to investments. The global oil sector alone will need cumulative investment of $12.1 trillion through to 2045. However, in recent years, we have heard calls from some to limit or stop funding for new oil and gas projects. This is disheartening and particularly impactful on developing countries with oil and gas resources. This great continent, Africa, has 120 billion barrels of proven oil reserves and 18 trillion standard cubic meters of natural gas. For countries to properly utilize these resources for the benefit of their people, investment levels must be adequate, whilst being mindful and taking actions to reduce the carbon footprint of the oil industry.
Meanwhile, energy industry officials have said that Africa needs to look within in order to solve the challenges that today's energy transition poses, and that an enabling environment is needed to harness cleaner fossil fuels. That was part of the conversations among panelists at the Nigerian Energy Summit. Listen here.
Within the African continent, there are many institutions or centers of training in oil and gas, but not a single one of them can be said to be what we will call a center of excellence in upstream, midstream, or downstream. And if each country is to put resources to develop those centers to the level that will make them really true centers of excellence, given what we have in terms of demand on governments and even the private sector, we shall be dissipating our resources. So we've come to the conclusion that we are going to identify within our member countries those that have gone very far in terms of having these structures. Then we will see what we can do to develop them and designate them as regional centers of excellence. Nigeria does not have to be the center of excellence in upstream, in midstream, in downstream, and everything, and gas. No. You take one or two and be a center of excellence, and Egyptians, Angolans, Namibians can come here instead of going to Europe and America. And we are very impressed with what we have seen. All we need to do now is to do the necessary coordination, find out what is missing in these places, and see what we can do to provide those things. We can still go to Europe and America and bring the experts that are teaching in those institutions that are closing down to come and help us develop these things on the African continent. Africa is not against the West or Europe, no. We will take the best from them in order to be able to develop our continent. What we are saying is, it is high time we looked within.
Of course, gas is going to be a transition fuel, and we should not underestimate that. But I still come back to believe that when you talk about that sustainability, you're looking at gas where if a year and a half ago, Europe decided that gas was green energy, and they would finance gas and gas taxonomy in Europe. But when it comes to Africa, gas will not be financed in Africa. So how do you tell people that gas is so important, but you wouldn't finance gas in Africa? I think gas is everything. It's going to be a gas continent. I wish African countries would have discovered gas before they discovered oil. And if we really have to look at that transition, then we really have to play the gas game. But now we have to start looking at small-scale LNG. We have to start looking at gas-to-power projects. But even bigger than that, we are in Nigeria, Africa's gas giant. We have to continue working on that enabling environment. I think Dr. Farouk would agree with me on this. I think it is so critical. We need to cut down red tapes. You know, it shouldn't take so long to approve a gas project than the time you need to build that project. That's so important. And you might not be so comfortable. We got to cut taxes. 90 million Nigerians don't have access to electricity. It is not something that we have to say it is acceptable. I know you love renewables a lot, but those sustainable development goals, what do you call SDG 7, you cannot meet them with 90 million without access to electricity. And so gas is going to be so important. That's why I think we at the chamber, we support what they're doing with pipelines. We don't think there's anything wrong with pipelines. If you can build them anywhere, as long as you can do it safe, sustainably, that is fine. It is gas, baby gas. Sign the deals and let's get moving. Stop the delays.
Coming next, Namibia takes the spotlight in a new report by the Energy Capital and Power. We'll be right back.
Imagine a future where tomorrow's solutions build a world of opportunities for all, and where human potential is truly realized, where every child has an equal chance in life, no matter where they were born. Imagine the potential of a continent built on low-carbon oil and natural gas and abundant renewable energy. Imagine Mozambique, Angola, Nigeria, Uganda, Senegal, Egypt, Namibia, and Algeria being let free to develop their natural resources without pressure from wealthy countries to leave it in the ground. Imagine an Africa where we cut red tape bureaucracy and provide better fiscal terms so we can compete globally for energy investments. African Energy Week is the African Energy Chamber's annual event held at the Cape Town waterfront, uniting African energy leaders, global investors, and executives from across the public and private sector for 4 days of intense dialogue on the future of the African energy industry. Showcasing the latest technologies and innovations to 5,000 plus registered delegates from over 100 countries and international professionals from across the global energy sector. Be part of the future of the energy industry and join the energy movement by becoming an official sponsor, exhibitor, delegate, or partner. African Energy Week.
Welcome back to the program. Now, Namibia has become one of Africa's most exciting exploration and upstream frontiers, with 2 major oil and gas discoveries made last year by global energy majors, Shell, Total Energies, and Qatar Energy. These discoveries provided the basis for Energy Capital and Power based in Cape Town in partnership with Namibia's Ministry of Mines and Energy to float an Energy Invest report on Namibia. Here's Miguel Artacho, the country manager for Namibia and Angola at Energy Capital and Power, walking me through this new report. Congratulations on your new Energy Invest report for Namibia.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Indeed, Energy Capital and Power produces energy investment reports in a number of sub-Saharan oil and gas producing countries. We're a Cape Town-based company that does market intelligence and reports and conferences. And we've just recently launched our Namibia Energy Invest 2023 publication in partnership with the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Namibia, headed by His Excellency Minister Tom Aliwida. Now, the timing of this report is excellent because we have a team that's in country now to produce this in-depth publication over the next few months that's going to cover the entire energy value chain in Namibia, from upstream exploration and production that's been underway, as well as renewable energy, where Namibia is working on development of hydrogen projects, for example. Furthermore, Namibia is hosting a high-level energy event next week in the capital city of Windhoek, which is the Namibia International Energy Conference 2023 that's taking place from April 25th to 28th, in which the top stakeholders from the government, such as the aforementioned minister or the Commissioner for Petroleum, Ms. Maggie Shino, will all be speaking alongside the Namibia's NOC, NAMCOR, or the African Energy Chamber, and a number of private sector players who are active in the energy sector and associated industries.
Now, recently, Qatar Energy and the Namibian government signed an MOU for cooperation on energy development. What does this mean for the Southern African country?
Well, it's an important development because Qatar Energy's Junker 1X well made a light oil discovery, and this follows a series of Orange Basin exploration successes that were announced last year, as well as Shell's Graph 1 and Total Energy's Venus 1 finds. And so essentially, IOCs such as Qatar Energy and the aforementioned companies have now fully proven Namibia's deep water reservoirs and their potential. So the memorandum of understanding that was recently signed between Qatar Energies and the Ministry of Mines is essentially, it's important because it's part of a trend of such arrangements that are shaping the domestic environment and showcasing the tremendous potential that Namibia has, and it follows other MOUs that were signed at other events. For example, at Angola Oil and Gas 2022, which took place in Luanda last year, Namibia's NOC, NAMCOR, signed an MOU with the government of Angola. So it's a positive step in the right direction that showcases the tremendous potential of the E&P sector here in Namibia.
And finally, the annual African Energy Week, the biggest on the calendar of the African Energy Chamber, is due from 16th to the 20th of October at the waterfront in Cape Town, South Africa. The high-profile gathering of thousands of industry professionals, executives, and policymakers will focus on the African Renaissance, prioritizing energy poverty, people, planet, industrialization, and free markets. Go online now and register to attend. And that's how we wrap up the show this week, and we thank you for watching. Remember to follow the program on Frontier Africa Reports website, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. I am Justina Okechukwu. It's goodbye for now.